Welcome to Stuck in the Middle, TTT, Tragedy to Triumph Transformation. This is all about taking the information that we have and applying it to you in your life so that you can be buffaloes, not cowards. We want to keep it raw, real, and uncut. This is for men to improve their relationships and increasing their spiritual values. I'm Ryan Smith, and I'm the host, and I'm with Bunker Weimer. I have some great thoughts that come from marriage, family, child counselor, MFCC Beverly Ingles' book, The Emotionally Abused Woman: Overcoming Destructive Patterns and Reclaiming Yourself, 1990. So it's a little bit dated. But this is helping break down the roles that we play in emotional abuse. And she listed, I think, like 6 or 7, but I listed 5 here. And she said there's the servant, the pleaser, we've talked about that, the codependent, the drama junkie, and the martyr. And so these are all beta characteristics that are played out in response to other people, where the alpha is just going to do what they need to do. They're going to live with integrity. The beta is going to play a role of being the servant, pleaser, codependent, drama junkie, and martyr. And before we start, I just want to say we all play a role in any system. In your family, I was the oldest of 8 kids, right? So I was the role that I played. I was more the responsible, the leader, I guess. The second dad, I don't know if that.
The alpha.
I don't know. I don't know the alpha, but I was the caretaker type. I was the example, I think, is how I. My dad was the alpha. Like he was, he was definitely in charge. I wasn't calling any shots or anything like that. And I was a kid, so I didn't even know what the shots were. But I was definitely someone that, if we had a family like function, we had a few family routines like scripture study, I'd be the one like kind of on my siblings like, hey, open your scriptures, something like that. Where like my sister, there's like the second youngest, like she was kind of more like the peacemaker, and she would like put like maybe more comedy and more like fun into things. So it's just interesting. And I really saw this. I thought that was my personality. I was just a more responsible person. But when I left my family system, got older and then after my divorce, when I was like in my second single stage, I played like the comedy, the comedian, and I was the life of the party, and I would be disruptive and I may have been a little bit of a hellraiser rebel, and to maybe go away from that role that I had, to offset that and find like, well, who is Ryan really? And I was on a kind of quest to live with my integrity that way. So let me just go into these. The servant all, because we already talked about. That's why it feels like if we just waited a whole nother episode, it seems like we didn't like complete the chapter, and I want to like finish the chapter. I'm not finish, start the next question, but let's at least answer this one with Todd and these roles. So the servant of all. Remember, we talked about being like the pleaser, and the servant and the pleaser, they're pretty similar. So let's see the nuanced difference with them. In fact, would you start reading that, Bunker?
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Is it just below the pleaser?
It's a first one. So we're on page 14.
Oh, I see. Okay. The servant of all. This behavior trait is learned out of a shaky sense of identity. Needy and needs a relationship because their relationship.
Needy and needs.
Needy and needs a relationship because their relationship is their identity. Their weak sense of self is driven out of a fear of more abandonment. Whoever they are with, they take on their personality and their identity, an appearance of others they think others want them to take on. This weak sense of self is prime for abusive relationships and often pursues partners that are inaccessible and run away because they oversaturate the relationship.
They're so needy, right?
Yeah.
Please call me, please call me, please call me. Will you
Right.
be there? Will you be there? And they never require anything of their partner, and the partner just knows, hey, they're always going to be there. I don't need to work in this relationship. They're so dependent, and they just need me so much, and so they just like, meh. They never had to sacrifice for their partner because their partner never asked anything of them. Yeah. So, and this goes back to the story we talked about with this TED talk. Maybe I'll put this in the link description. This is great TED talk, and she talked about how in that date she had this great epiphany. She says, how do I feel right now with the date I'm on? And that was a huge breakthrough for her, where she's like, how do I actually feel right now? Because before she was so preoccupied with um what kind of girl do I need to be to this guy, and what kind of girl is he looking for, and how can I be that thing for him? But the question was never, how do I feel? Is this comfortable for me? Is this the place that I want to be in? Because if you start asking those questions, it's a slippery slope that's going to get to a place where you're going to say, you know what, Bucko, I don't like what you just did, and that doesn't fly with me. And if you continue to do this, I'm going to leave you. And that takes some real guts. And that's the servant of all is an easier place that doesn't demand anything in the relationship. So if you think this is you, here are a few questions to see if this fits. The servant of all mindset. 5 questions. Do you tend to blame yourself when things go wrong?
Would you like me
No, I was just thinking about, I was wondering if I wanted to put any qualifiers to that. But I think just how easy do you blame yourself when things go wrong, even maybe knowing that you take on all the blame rather than just your piece of the pie? 2, yeah, would you read the next one?
2, if you make a mistake, do you see yourself as all bad? I think that's one that a lot of people I know struggle with. It's kind of lives on catastrophic extremities. It's I'm the worst person ever, or I'm the best person ever. And it can be small or big, but say it's something little, it can be very detrimental to them and their mental health. Like it just crashes the whole train.
Yes, and it just like is one more evidence of how this is like a shame-based person. Like
Yeah.
everything's my fault. This is one more evidence that I'm a bad person, and this like reaffirms their underlying belief they're a bad person, and so they like to blame it because that is helpful for their agenda to be unworthy of love. 3, do you placate others or try to buy them in an attempt to keep harm at bay? So you don't ever rock the boat, and you just kind of, oh, you want this? Okay, let me get it for you.
Yeah.
Does taking risks make you feel so frightened that you do not actually follow through on your goals? And we talked about that a lot. Like living with integrity is gutsy. It is hard, but you got to do it. And then lastly, do you often have a violent outburst of rage? And I would think that this comes from you've been bottling it in for so long, you haven't been true to yourself, and then you have to be in a rageful, drunken state of anger to let it all your voice get out. Because I think it is a misconception that you can bottle your emotions. They come out. You can control when they come out, maybe, right? You can probably control, like you can like bite your lip, but it's gonna come out eventually, and you can't create or destroy energy. It's always there, and so if it's there, you gotta like let it out in a helpful, appropriate way. And if you're never validating or ever giving a voice to your voice, then it's going to come out in violent outbursts, and then you're going to hurt people.
I remember in one of my psychology classes, they talked about people who rate the highest in compassion and sensitivity often can be the most violent outbursts, aggressive people, because like you said, they hold it in, but they're people that oftentimes you would never guess. They can come as a real surprise or shock to family members or the people that they're around. They might be friends for years, and eventually it's just they blow up, and it's a whole new side of a whole different person that they never knew was in there, and it can be kind of scary sometimes.
Yes, reminds me. I remember there was a Air Force drill sergeant, and he yelled like I'd never seen anybody yell. And I was watching him. I wasn't the receiving end, but I was seeing the other Air Force cadets, and one of my cadre was saying, "You would never believe it, but he is an elementary, like first grading teacher." He had another side to him. Well, cool. Let's move on. So the pleaser. This is characterized by peace at any price, and the price they pay is often damaging to themselves, their self-esteem, and their own happiness. So, kind of what you were saying is They kill themselves, but they never like rock the boat with others. The pleaser behavior is unable to question authority figures, believing others are better than themselves. They try to justify their existence by becoming a source of help to others. Their merit is based solely on what they do, not what they are. They are human doings, not human beings. Others' approval or rejection of them is their scorecard to their worth. Thus, they are overly concerned with what others think, and more especially what the pleaser thinks others are thinking about them. They will make excuses for the abuser's temper, their lack of empathy, and justify with a false hope that they will change without behavioral evidence to the contrary. They'll give them all sorts of passes saying it's okay and never hold their feet to the fire. If you do that again, this is what's going to happen. They're not willing to draw the line. The pleaser will take the blame and apologize, even perfectly appropriate behavior on their part, in order to keep the peace and be liked. You may be a pleaser if you answer yes to many of the following questions. Take it away, Bunker.
1, do you feel that you count only when you are taking care of others?
You have a question look on your face. Just your value.
No, yeah, sorry. Maybe that's just my face. But no, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, yeah.
I was just pausing because I thought maybe you would have some comments that you wanted to throw. Would you like me just to keep reading? And if you have a thought, you'll interject. Okay. So just real quick. 1, do you feel that you count only when you were taking care of others? 2, do you feel that you can't do most things right? 3, are you always saying, I should have, or I ought to have? 4, do you have a difficult time saying no? I think a lot of people would resonate with that one.
I have. It's hard to say no. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like to disappoint people.
All right. 5, do you often feel guilty? 6, do you pretend to enjoy yourself when you do not? This is one I've been surprised with a lot of times when I talk to different people, and they can be very happy and outgoing and they seem to be pretty bright. And then when you really dive into it with them and they're like, hey, what's going on? That's usually what comes out. Like, I really just don't like myself. And, that's a hard thing for people to carry around. And so anyways, do you have a thought on that, or do you concur?
I just think, that's one of the big challenges of life. You got to like me.
Yeah.
That for a long time, that maybe even still, I think that's my go-to. I like me. And I would probably talk about that more another time. Just there's an inner child that when we get into the 4 agreements, the agreements we make, we'll talk more about like the inner child, and we got to be nice to that little boy inside of us. For the women listening, the little girl inside of you, and you got to, we'll go into that, but yeah, thank you.
No, you're bet. 7, do you fake it, telling others that you like or approve of what others do or say, but you don't really? 8, are you nice to others because you hope they'll be nice in return, but unable to ask yourself if you really like them? 9, do you make friends with easy people rather than people you want to make friends with that inspire you?
Oh,
That's a big one.
And as I read that, like, I got room to improve. I think I don't like to disappoint. I think I probably do have the pleaser. This is, I don't know, the servant of all. I don't know, probably, but I think for me, I'm taking inventory on this. Like, yeah, there was a trainer. I disappointed him. We kind of had a relationship going, but I chose someone else, and I was like so worried. Like, are we still good? And I needed that, like, a thing. And sometimes you gotta do what's best for you. And I don't know. Like, there was a part I still want to care about them. I don't want to be a jerk, but did I maybe think about it too much? And so, just good thing. All right, we're gonna go on. The codependent. Actually, would you read this? And
Absolutely.
I'll read the questions for the next one.
The codependent. This is a very different energy, yet still a magnet for abusive relationships because they also create it. The codependent is obsessed with controlling others and their behavior. The codependent adaptive behavior is really good at keeping score in the relationship because they live their life to rescue and care for others, but expecting equal or similar treatment. If they do not feel that they received what they put into the relationship, they are upset and force their partners to pay up for what they believe is owed them. They feel victimized, angry, unappreciated, and used. This is especially prevalent for people that when they were a child, they were parentified. You might need to explain the word parentified for the listeners and myself.
Parentified, just it's super easy. As a child, you took on a parent role. We talked about in the
Gotcha.
system, we have different roles, and a child that is a parent, that's an unhealthy relationship. It's too much responsibility for a kid. And this happened like this really is very easy to be created if there's a single parent situation. Let's say there's a single mother and her oldest child, male or female, basically becomes, and if there's more than one, especially if there's like more than one child, that oldest child will be parentified often.
Parentified. Okay, thank you for your clarification. I'm going to continue. They often had to control the out of control home life as pseudo adults and had to learn the art of controlling their parents' irresponsible behavior, such as drugs, gambling, and other addictions. Parents fighting or overall unstable. People with learned codependent behaviors have weak sense of self and are not happy with themselves. They look for others and stimulation outside of themselves for momentary distraction they call joy, such as an over obsession with food, fun, fame, fortune, and friends relationships. They often manipulate friendship relationships out of a fear that the real them is unlovable. They play cat and mouse games to keep the relationship at bay, fearing that the other will really discover their dirty secrets. They push vulnerable feelings outside their awareness and focus their energy on other people. Facing reality is not fun for them. The codependent behavior learned person ignores problems and justifies mistakes, refusing to take accountability. They will either pretend or outright lie to not be how do you pronounce it? Culpable
Culpable,
of mistakes.
yeah, big word, but you know they're
So,
so they don't have to be held accountable for the
right.
mistakes. So, woo,
That's a pretty loaded
how
paragraph right there.
how uh, uh, how vulnerable do I want to be here? I was in a relationship. Let's keep it at that. I not to call them out, but I was in a relationship, and this was their thing. And so this is this was my, you know, we talk about things that really happened to us. It's not just from the books. This happened, and this was my partner's, their mo. And you know they had this scorecard, and if I didn't pay up, ooh baby, I got it. And I didn't even know why they were attacking me, and it was this, I didn't know what I did wrong, and we wouldn't talk about it, and all sorts of things. But not to make this about me, I just want to say in this that this makes sense. I want to make sense of the senseless, uh, make some rationality out of the irrational, or make sense of the senseless. I think is the best way to say that. Look, and I have sympathy for this partner of mine because this was their experience. Their parents had a bad relationship. They didn't trust each other. They were always fighting. And her mother parentified her, my partner, and they became a parent set, and my partner became, had more authority in the house than her father. And how I want to make sense of this is, uh, you know, we talked about like the single parent and how it's easy if there isn't another figure that someone fills that vacuum, and it's easy for, and I'm not saying all single parents parentify their kids, but it's an easier place to kind of make sense of that. But if there's one parent that is perceived or really irresponsible, then they have the child that's willing to take on that role, be that responsible one. And the thing is that role becomes more important than the actual person. And that's the big sin or the mistake of parentifying your children, is that you don't see them as a world to discover. You see them as only what they can do. They become a human doing. Be the responsible one that the parent needs you to be, because their partner doesn't fulfill that. And so they buy into the lie that their worth is only in their ability to uh, regulate and do things in the relationship and be the responsible role. And so it's the role is more important than the person. And that's what we talked about before. Remember how like my comedy teacher, she like, whoa, Ryan, you just broke out of the mold I put you in. And we do this in a parentified place. You know, a good parent is going to be curious about their child and is going to help them develop into their best selves rather than the parent saying, you're going to be a mathematician or you're going to be an athlete like I always wanted me to be, and you're going to live out my dreams. That's like selfish parenting, right? So it's fulfilling a role that's not authentic for them. True love is just going to let them discover themselves. So the 8 questions for this is to clarify the behavior if you are codependent is, first, do you feel responsible for other people, their feelings, thoughts, action, choices, needs, wants, well-being, and their destiny? That's too much, right? And we talked about control. In life, you want to control yourself, but you don't control other people. And if you find yourself responsible for their destiny, that's too much. Do you feel compelled to help others solve their problems by offering unsolicited advice and often give rapid fire suggestions and unwilling to be patient with their feelings of hurt and loss? Going back to this, you have this narrow mind of who they are. And so if they go out of it, you can't handle it. And they're going to be unwilling if maybe they are the culprit. If there's any, a codependent is also usually a savior role. They're usually a very responsible role. It's not usually like the rebel role. The codependent is usually a good role. It's usually a good person role. And so it's hard to differentiate between their role and who they truly are as a being.
Number 2.
Yeah, so that was number 2. And so the reason why you're going to be impulsive and give unsolicited advice is because you think you know what's best for them, and you're not going to truly listen to people because you don't truly listen to yourself. How you treat yourself is how you treat other people. And I often say to my couples, the reason why you have a bad relationship is in your marriage is because you have a bad relationship with you. That's the $1 million advice right there. Ching. Moving on. Do you spend your conversations talking about injustices done to you and done to others as gossip, with or without concern about the damage it may cause? And it probably is maybe even intentional. You're wanting to create damage because your gossip methods are a part of the pay up. If they didn't do this to me, and you're going to rally supporters that you're the victim, and then maybe they're gonna peck at them and create just how you feel like you were abused. You're going to have other people kind of throw it back at the person that you want to get back at. Is your identity seen only in your relationship with others? So if you can't stand alone, you're easily jumping in relationships and you always need to be in a relationship. That's a problem. Do you feel empty or worthless if you don't have someone else to take care of, with a problem to solve or a crisis to put out? 6, do you have a secret happiness when you catch others in an act of misbehavior that you can use as blackmail? So you get happy when other people fail. Dun, dun, dun. 2 more questions. Do you lose interest in your other life responsibilities when you are in love? Do you throw caution to the wind and are totally irresponsible? That is a sign. Do you leave bad relationships only to form new ones and switch to similar problems because you failed to learn from the past, especially because you never took inventory of your life, because considering your own mistakes is unrealistic from your point of view? So a lot of questions there. I'm getting tired. I'm being authentic with myself. Should we keep going? I just want to. I'm getting tired. I'm sure our viewers are getting tired. There's a lot.
The only things I would say is we could either continue to record and then edit it, like make a break in the video recording and upload it in 2 different things, or we could cut it now and then record more later and then put them together. I think it'd be simple to do editing wise either way. I think just whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, let's keep going. We're just going to hard charge this.
Okay, you got it.
Could you do the adrenaline drama junkie?
Absolutely. This behavior was a learned coping mechanism, as all of these are, from childhood. And the adrenaline junkie usually had a highly chaotic home life as a child. But I know some where the adrenaline junkie is a rebellious wild card because of the overly strict home life. So kind of both ends of the spectrum there. The adrenaline junkie is not interested in finding healthy, stable partners that will treat them with love and respect. They choose partners that challenge them, that is distant, hard to reach, someone they can't be sure of, even abusive partners. Otherwise, they feel their partner is boring. The following questions may help you identify if you have learned to be a drama junkie. Now, before we get into questions, I kind of wanted to ask, would this adrenaline and drama junkie be someone who is described as having like daddy issues?
Sure.
Because that seemed to fit. And I think that's like a very common slang, if you will, that is very recognizable to people. Because in a dating aspect, we kind of throw that term around. Oh, I went out with so-and-so, they have mom or dad issues. And immediately, like, we know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Specifically, going back to this TED talk that I think was so good, she talked about marrying yourself. And I think that's even the title of the TED talk. And maybe I'll look it up while we're doing this, but she had been adopted and been in like several foster home environments, and there's probably a lot of shenanigans that went on during those foster homes. And she didn't come outright and say it, but my theory is that she was abused as a child, and so there was a lot of, and so agreements she made to herself that she's not lovable, and so when she was an adult, she would get into relationships that were chaotic because they reminded her of how she was. That was the familiar she knew, and so it just makes sense. And so, I think she got married to like a stable, wonderful guy, but he was too stable for her, and so she divorced him.
Wow.
So it was too unfamiliar for her. And then the other adrenaline junkie is like the home is just too rigid,
You
and
got
they
to go against the grain a little bit.
just want to just go out the other way, and so they won't be able to ask like the important questions like, is this a good life term partner? It's like, I have so much unresolved grief, and I just need to, that person on the motorcycle, let's just go for it, and let's elope, and let's do one night stands, and let's get into all sorts of things, and just throw
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yep. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Okay, so questions here. Are you almost, there are, 10 questions here. Are you almost always angry with at least one person in your life? Hmm? Do you frequently find yourself in heated arguments with friends, family, coworkers, and etc.? Do you like fighting? If so, that is probably something to check out. Are your reunions after fights and separation from your lovers intensely erotic? And that's like maybe the pattern. You fight, you break up. Isn't there like
You fight, you break up, you make up, you break up.
oh,
Is that what it is? Is that what you're thinking
Taylor
of?
Swift song? Like,
Yeah, so I think that's what I was quoting.
yeah, Taylor Swift
I
song,
like that.
or maybe a Pink song or something. But fight, we break up. It's just like that's how it goes. And probably to avoid the real heart of the relationship is vulnerability. Right when you're about to get vulnerable, you do something that's too distracting. You create a fire to not go to those vulnerable places. 4, is there almost always some kind of crisis occurring in your life? 5, do you find yourself needing to stir things up when things get too calm? Do you get easily bored? Do you tend to be unhappy with routine and instead prefer a lifestyle that involves continual change? 8, do you ever wonder whether anyone or anything will ever really make you happy? 9, do you often have fantasies that are filled with violence or illicit sex? And lastly, do you tend to become attracted to and get involved with others who are unavailable, are not interested in you just for the game of it, who are abusive, or who have problems that make it unlikely to have a stable life together? That is the adrenaline drama junkie. And now we will close with this last role, the martyr or victim.
Perfect. The victim mentality is dangerous because it only attracts bad and worse things in one's life. This learned behavior has the worldview that life is merely one bad thing after another, and there is nothing that they can do about it. Life is about survival. Thriving is a luxury for others, maybe, but not them. They willingly believe that they are sacrificing their own health, happiness, and well-being for others, but cannot see that this is only an illusion that they have created. Their thoughts ruminate with woe is me and everything is hopeless and I shouldn't try because I'll fail anyways. This learned thinking usually comes from a childhood with a parent and caretaker that was hypercritical, over-controlling, and domineering, and another parent who was passive, inadequate, and codependent. And the only way to survive their abuse was to concede as the victims themselves.
Yeah. And if we're honest, I think everybody plays this role, has part of this in them. You know, woe is me, you know, negative Nancy, right? The following questions will help you determine whether you are caught in a victim mindset. If you answer yes to half of these questions, you are suffering from a victim mentality. And we have 13 questions, and we will wrap it up.
Mhm.
Do you feel, number one, do you feel you have to walk on eggshells to keep others from getting angry? 2, are you so fearful of confrontation that you avoid it despite knowing you need to? 3, do you over apologize, are too polite, and find yourself saying, I'm sorry out of habit? Do you feel overpowered by your partner? 5, do you feel that you can't do anything right? 6, do you often feel like running away to not deal with your responsibilities? 7, do you have a hard time saying no? 8, when you stand up for your rights, do you find yourself frightened and embarrassed for the repercussions that you avoid it altogether? And I just want to say, feeling that isn't the problem. It's like what you do about it. Because I'll be honest, I don't like to tell people no and disappoint people. And if I know that there's something embarrassing or there's repercussions, I I definitely have feelings to avoid that. I don't want to be embarrassed or have negative repercussions, but if I know I need to, do you follow through with that? 9, do you feel you have few options and choices for improving your life? 10, do you often feel that people don't appreciate you? And that's your like MO, how you see the world. The world owes me. 11, when you are presented with a problem, do you usually become overwhelmed with doubts and fears and assume you will not be able to cope with the situation if you do not take risks? So is your first response when something happens fear? Which be gentle on yourself. I think when any change happens, that's probably fine. But I think opposed to saying for all these questions, like, oh, if I feel that, that's a problem. I don't think so. I think the problem is do you live with integrity? If you know you should do something, do you do it? If you don't, that's a problem. But if you do and you follow through, that's a problem. So the fact that you feel fearful with change, that's not a problem. 12, do you feel hopeless and immobilized when you feel stress? Because I would say, yeah, when you feel stressed, you feel that's like the definition of stress. Like stress means you don't have a solution to it. So yeah, you're going to feel hopeless and immobilized. So this is, I think, but when you do feel stress, immobilized and helpless, how long do you stay stuck in that? That's, I think, a better question. So I am kind of doing a little editorial note to these questions here. And then lastly, do you let situations deteriorate into catastrophes or exaggerate them into appeasing them? So basically, if you need to rock the boat, do you follow through on it? Or yeah, or do you follow through, and do you allow risks in your life? I think is the sum of this. There's lots of probably many points of today. Well, let's wrap it up today. We do have another great question, or actually a few, but I think we're going to wrap it up. Any major points before we close today, Bunker?
No, I think we have covered a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, no, I could just because just the speaker in me likes to, like, you got to say what you're going to say it, and then say what you just said. I just want to review what we did. So this episode was all today about Todd's question. I think I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship. I'm not sure. How can I tell? So we really tried to define what that is, where that is, how to smell it. And we talked about control and the willingness to be vulnerable. And then we talked about what a healthy relationship looks like and what unhealthy is, and how they go on to either one extreme, either too much on the shame base or too much on the pride base. And then we also talked about roles that we get set into, and how we need to see people as authentic and that they're changing and dynamic. They're not just in a box and that's how they are. We need to be willing to like grow with them. And I heard the phrase, who I married on a wedding night and who I'm married to now 10 years later is a totally different person. And that's a good thing, is that we're dynamic. That you want to keep changing, and we have different life stages, but and so people change. And so there's an evolution, and that's the fun of relationships. And so, and then we did talk about different roles. We talked about 5 roles in specific, and we asked questions to identify, to assess if that's you. And we talked about the servant, the pleaser, the codependent, the drama junkie, and the martyr. So thank you for being with us today. That is all. We are very grateful for you, proud of you, and the courage it takes to demonstrate living with integrity. If you made it this far, that is already a demonstration, and I applaud you. And we will catch you next time. But for now, we're going to love you and leave you. Peace.